We are live.
All right, we are live. It is just after lunch on Wednesday, and as the General and Housing Committee, we are here today with folks from the more commercial side of housing. We've been hearing from advocates, and this is a selection of folks from another facet of the conversation about housing. Next week, starting next week and the week after, we'll hear from administration officials who deal with housing. And so with us today is Matt Musgrave from the Associated General Contractors of Vermont. Matt, because we are so new, we're going to go around the room and introduce ourselves. Representative Tom Stevens from Waterbury.
Representative Kathleen James from Bennington 4.
Representative Saudia Lamont from Loyola, Washington.
Joe Parsons, Newbury, Topsom, and Groton.
Emily Krasnow, South Burlington.
Ashley Bartley, Fairfax, and Georgia.
Caleb Elder, Starksboro.
Dennis LeBounty, Caledonia 3.
Elizabeth Burrows, Windsor 1, which is Heartland, West Windsor, and Windsor.
Larry Labor, Orleans, Essex 1.
This seat is Mary Howard at 6, and I'm Robin Chestnut, Tangerine, Rutland, Bennington District.
Well, it's a pleasure to meet all of you. And my name is Matt Musgrave, for the record. I'm with the Associated General Contractors of Vermont, and I'm going to set my handouts aside. If after the meeting you would like handouts, I'm happy to share them with you, but we will not clutter your table with handouts. So thanks for having me in today. It's a pleasure to meet all of you, and congratulations for those of you that are new in the building, or maybe not new, but sitting on the other side of the table. So the Associated General Contractors of Vermont is a trade association that represents construction professionals across the state. Those are in several different divisions. We have our general contractors that are working out on the roads and bridges that you see generally during the summertime, maybe some emergency work during the winter. If any of you traveled between the exit of Richmond and Waterbury last year, you saw one of our members out there repairing a giant hole from a culvert. So that's one division that we work with. We also have our ready mix division, which are the concrete suppliers throughout the state. We also have an electrical division, Vermont Independent Electrical Contractors Association. And we also do a number of other programs, including the Project Road Safe program, where we help train and work with commercial truck drivers. And there's also an element of public outreach for safety on our roadways. We have, between the different divisions, around 200 members. Those members, again, they consist of road and bridge builders, commercial builders. They do a lot of the state capital projects, courthouses and such. We also have a number of home builders and large developers like SD Ireland and Negley Chase, for example, that do very large housing projects. We even have some luxury home builders that work within our ranks as well. So we have just about every different type of contractor that works out there. And among those contractors, they employ currently around 16,000 people throughout the state of Vermont in various jobs and positions, which I'll talk to you a little bit further about. We as everybody else are having a workforce challenge. Right now we're operating at around 16,000 employees. If you go back prior to 2008, which we all understand to be the Great Recession, we were up around 19,000 people that were out building homes, bridges, and anything in between, civil construction work as well. That did go down after the Great Recession. We finally have come back up to around 16,000 employees. We had a slight drop. Something happened in March of 2020 where we all had to go home and stay safe. But contractors were among the first people that were back out at work. In fact, contractors were out doing the state's work within 3 weeks of the stay home, stay safe order, having had produced the first in the state return to work COVID exposure plan, which was eventually adopted by the Vermont Office of Safety and Health Administration. If you all remember, there was a PDF document. You went on VOSHA's website, you read that PDF, and you signed your name at the end. A lot of that material came out of work from our membership. The jobs that we offer to employees in the state of Vermont are generally very well-paid jobs. In fact, a construction laborer coming on the site now is generally starting at $20 an hour with a full set of benefits. In one of my handouts that I can supply you with, we have some data and statistics on that as well. I'd also encourage you to check out our website. Well, we have several websites, but our job platform website, VermontConstructionJobs.com, where you can go and see what different job types that are out there. It tells people about being like a heavy equipment operator or an electrician, a civil engineer. It shows what the job title requirements are, what you do for work. It also shows what the average pay is based on the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. And it's a story that we're really happy to talk about. Some of the state data for what construction provides is about $1.2 billion of revenue through the state through these construction projects. And that breaks out into two major sections. One is private non-residential spending, which includes homes, that includes other or not non-residential homes. That's their commercial buildings and such. And then another portion of that is around, last year we had a record transportation budget of around $900 million, which was very generous because of the Infrastructure and Jobs Act that was passed at the federal level. So we do offer a significant amount of revenue to the state, which then translates out to tax dollars. So just that quick introduction to what we do, who we are. Another thing that we do, as we are the largest OSHA training facility in the state of Vermont, we put around 2,000 of our staff members through that program, which also includes the Mine Safety Health Administration program, which is for people that work in mines. And while in the state of Vermont, we don't have strip mining per se, the definition of a mine includes a gravel pit. So if you work in a gravel pit, you must come and take an annual refresher with us once a year so that you're staying safe from anything from electrocution, fall hazards, confined spaces, and chemicals you may run into out there. Some things that people don't know about our organization is that we really do a lot of the majority of the work throughout the state of Vermont for our climate and environment work. So we do work on the electrical grids. We work on clean energy production. We also do the heavy civil work in terms of water, sewer, and stormwater. That's a big issue that's going on right now. We worked very hard over the last couple of years with the state to develop stormwater programs, and now those stormwater programs are going into effect, as you can see, going around to different locales. It's best represented by looking at all the great new drainage that you see on the side of the road and culverts that are going in. So we do a lot of work with the environment, and quite honestly, it is a major source of work for our members. So they do enjoy getting out there and doing that. And our current president, Ken Pigeon, who runs Engineers Construction out of Williston, has a particular passion for doing that kind of work. And a lot of our members share that same passion because they live here, after all, because of the natural resources we enjoy in Vermont, whether they're skiers or like to go fishing. This is all part of their world, and they enjoy doing that work. Another thing that a lot of people might not know about our industry is we are quite diverse in terms of our population. We have people of all different types, people that identify as men and women. Our companies are split about halfway between those individuals. We have a number of programs that we put in place over the last several years to try to create more inclusivity within our program if you look at our job board website, we work with consultants to try to figure out a way that we could show people of all types that we have an open door. We have a great opportunity for high paying jobs with good outcomes that people can enjoy. So we are constantly working with folks, and she's no longer in the legislature, but I'll thank former Representative Lucy Rogers for helping us out with some of that work that we did. So that's something that we very much pride ourselves on. Another thing that we've been working hard on is people that have barriers to employment, whether that's transportation or having to care for children or recovering from addiction or incarceration. So we pride ourselves on that. This is something that we work hard on to keep that door wide open because we believe the outcomes from these positions can actually help people out significantly in their lives. And that again, contributes to our community that we live with. Workforce is a big deal for us, and you'll hear me in here on a number of these different topics. I know you had some of my friends from the labor force that were in here this morning. We'll oftentimes come in and help craft bills that are related to working with our employees. We're also going to come in and talk about different ways that we can help build that workforce because we're struggling. When I started 5 years ago working with AGC, the average age of a construction worker in the state of Vermont was 55. It's been 5 years. So we have an aging population. Last year, we put together a job and career fair that we held up at the Essex Fairgrounds, where we had over 1,200 attendees. We had 175 employers from throughout the state. And we were able last year to add about 2,500 people into the construction business. Sounds like good news. We lost 2,000 people in that same year. So we did have a net gain of 500 individuals coming into the business, but right now I could put 2,000 more to work immediately. So we're going to do this again. We've already started planning. April 20th, we'll be holding another, what we consider to be, well, statistically is Vermont's largest career fair at the fairgrounds again. And I'll send invitations out to this committee. We have a couple of other committees that are planning to do field trips. So if you want to get out on the road, we'd love to have you out there. So one of the handouts that I will give to you at a later time includes a document that we hand out to potential recruits because one of the things that's really important in our industry is that we not only attract them with the entry level pay, and that's very good. I mean, you can come into a career in construction right now. You don't have to go have a 4-year degree. You don't have to have any degree. You graduate high school, you show up for work on time, and you can do basic math. They're going to be happy to hire you. But that's not enough to bring people into an industry that has a physical element to it, that people realize this is not only hard work, I'm putting myself in a dangerous situation. What else is in there for me? So we've created this handout that actually shows pathways for someone to move from being a helper or a laborer in the very beginning of their career to moving through. We actually, it's really neat. It's based on a city. We took a city street map and we actually drew lines and showed the pathway from going from a day laborer all the way up to in some cases owners, which is a great outcome that we have. And a lot of our members can say that they had started out as walking in the door, picking up a shovel, and now some of them are owning multi-million-dollar businesses. So that's great. Other stuff that we've been doing to attract people to our industry is we just partnered with Invest EAP, which is a wellness program benefit that came through a state grant that gives opportunity for staff members, if they're having challenges of some kind, to get free help. And this becomes in addition to their healthcare benefit, in addition to their income, in addition to their other benefits. If someone has a mental health crisis or a challenge, it gives them a number that they can call, talk to a counselor, or help them out with those first steps for free to figure out how to help them, what needs do they have. It also provides legal services. There's a number of different services, but the whole idea is that was founded by the fact that construction has one of the highest level of suicides out of any business that exists out there. So in addition to providing well-paying jobs, keeping them physically safe at the job site, which is what we do through our OSHA programs, we also have to adapt to the workers of the future and now who we have to deal with mental wellness in other pieces of their life. I mean, the EAP program is actually pretty neat. If someone doesn't know how to operate a checkbook, for example, or deal with their own personal finances, we can put them in touch with not their employer, but through counselors that are able to help them out with those situations. Other things that we're doing is we're trying to adapt to things like the legalization of marijuana and how does that impact our employment. Of course, most of our members do drug testing at times of employment. So we have to look at that now and are developing policies that we don't want to push people away. We don't push people away for drinking alcohol when they're not at work. So we have to figure out a way to continue to push that. So we're constantly going to be looking for ways to keep this open for people to come into our industry. We want to take care of them. One of the things that's not spoken of a lot now is this is an employee market, and it has been for quite a long time in construction. And so what that does is it gives the employees the ability to expect that they're going to have a good place to work, that we're going to respect their lives, we're going to respect their income, And that we also realize that they have a life outside of work that they need to be healthy in as well. So we're constantly going in that direction. So with that, that's a little introduction to what we do. I'm happy to come up here anytime that, whether it's a labor issue or a housing issue, and chat with you. And I know your topic today was housing. I will tell you my number one challenge with bringing workers into this workforce is housing. 100% housing is the big ticket item. We can go out of state. This is, based not only on anecdotal information that I get from actually talking to people from out of state that are considering coming to work in Vermont. We can offer the same amount of money for a position that's in Western Massachusetts or North Carolina or upstate New York. But when they come and look at the cost of living here and realize that if they want to live somewhere where there's a population of people, they're going to pay for a rental the same amount of money for a 2-bedroom as they would pay for a $300,000 or $400,000 home without the benefits of home ownership. So my message today, and I'm happy to come back. I know that we have a professional realtor here and some other housing advocates here with some great ideas. I'm happy to come back when we talk about bills, but I want to point you to a couple of articles that I read, and this is, I just want you to know that we are very passionate about this subject. There was one article that was written in Vermont Digger by the Vermont Chamber, and that was a very pointed article about we've had enough. It's time for us to figure out a way to build houses in Vermont to help people. Help the working class people of Vermont have homes, realize the American dream, have opportunities and the desire to move and live here. There was also another great article in 7 Days that talked about the exclusionary zoning that's been going on for about 40 or 50 years. That quite frankly is a systemic issue that we have to tackle because those exclusionary zoning practices just keep certain people out, and that's the working class. So I'm asking this committee, let's make this a priority this year to build houses for the working class of Vermont, and we'll keep building them.
Well, as you know, this committee hasn't done anything for the last 5 years, so we're happy to. The idea that the breadth now of the conversation about the need for housing, home ownership, and rentals is amazing to me. And I don't know that it was avoidable given just the nature of our housing stock and the age of our housing stock, but I appreciate, that industries, small and large, are beginning to see and how we address NIMBY as one of the facets of, exclusionary zoning is, for many years, it's just been zoning. And now we're identifying it as exclusionary because it's preventing building from going on. And so all very much part of our agenda or our priorities.
And sincerely, I don't want to discredit the work that you've done over the years, because you have. Last year I sat before this committee and we talked about some opportunities to fund programs like the Housing Trust and through my Housing Finance Agency and a number of those things. Frankly, that's great. It's like giving medicine to someone that has COVID. They've got COVID already. You're just giving them medicine to try to cure it. We want to try to prevent it. Let's prevent this by getting rid of some of the regulations that are stopping development.
And one of the things that I'll leave you with is, and a focus I think perhaps that you and your organization can help us with, is the idea that infrastructure. So much of what we've dealt with is not enough money to build housing in a somewhat perfect world, right? And but the idea of settlement patterns where there's infrastructure, first of all, and how do you expand infrastructure so that it's not sprawl, so-called, and who builds it and who pays for it? Because we know that some of the federal money can be used, we hope, to help developers bring the line to the neighborhood. But I imagine that many of your some of your contractors actually do that work.
I think you'd be surprised if the fear of dealing with some of the regulatory challenges that exist today, that there would be a lot more private investment. Josh Hanford, I believe you have coming in today or tomorrow, spoke last night at a meeting that I was at, and the state just can't keep throwing money at it. Private investment needs to exist at the same time. But it's a lot easier for public investment because the risk of public investment is we're taking money, in particular last year, was out of a one-time expenditure from the federal government. And if we made a mistake with it, we made a mistake with it. On the private side, if someone makes a mistake and they go and do 2 years of work to put together a project, and an individual appeals that project, who happens to have a little bit more money than they do and can keep them in court for several more years, that person risks losing their business. And if they lose their business, their employees go out the door too. So there's a huge amount of responsibility for private industry to make sure that they're making wise investments. It's not being stingy or not wanting to make the investments, because they, quite frankly, will earn money from making those investments. But nobody puts bad money after bad policy or high risk situations. So the money is there, the will to invest is there, the will to grow is there. I believe that this legislature, from everything that I've read in the press, I think that we have an appetite to tackle these now.
Well, we have to. And I mean, one of the major things for me is the tension between downtown development. I'm going to use Waterbury as an example. It's got a big, long, flat road that half of it happens to be in the flood zone. The other half is in the flood area. And so how do you build, so the tension between people who want infill, who I feel like downtown is where infill is, but with the environmental legislation that we're considering and the need to respect the river, in our case, there's real tensions there. And yeah, trying to untangle those so that we can promote more building in places where they should be. Of course, settlement patterns in Vermont were built, around rivers.
Well, when you drive around too, you'll see, you have your 10-acre lots, because at one period in time, we had an exemption for 10-acre lots, and out-of-state organizations came in, bought up tracts of land, cut them into what we call shoestring lots, and you have these shoestring lots all over the state because that was the way to get around regulation at the time. I'll pick on my family, as a matter of fact, owns a piece of property in Essex town. This piece of property is less than 3 miles from the downtown district. It's on 7.5 acres of land with 800 feet of curb cut, and local zoning laws won't allow them to subdivide to even build one extra property, where they could technically build 7 homes could be on that lot, but we can't do it.
Right. So that's, again, the local control balance, the tensions there exist as well. So thank you so much for coming in. Please leave your materials here, and we will have them. And then please make sure that we get electronic copies so that we can post them as well.
Great. Well, I appreciate the opportunity, and welcome back.
And you'll send us the job fair.
You will definitely
Okay,
get an
great.
invite for
Thank
that. Yep.
Yes.
Just a quick question. I know you said that the average age of construction is like 55 years old, and you have these job fairs to try to, bring younger people into the mix. Do you have any ability to go to the high schools to try to, encourage them to, when they come out of high school, to come into the construction trade? Because I know some schools have, tech jobs, or it might have welding, but in construction as a whole, do you have that opportunity to talk to juniors and seniors to say, hey, you know what? Not everybody's college material, but here's some great, jobs where you can really have a good career.
Definitely. Absolutely. Yes. A great success story that I'm happy to share with you is I got a phone call when I'm not doing the legislature. I do just about anything else you could think of at a trade organization, include workforce. So I got a call from the tech teacher at Otter Valley Union High School. They wanted to put together a construction program, and they wanted to get some local resources to help train their people. So what we did as an association was we went out and met with them, brought in some of our local members. We actually were successful at getting Casella Construction and Markowski Excavation, which both operate out of Rutland, to donate heavy equipment to the school so that they could run this program. So they weren't giving them the, giant excavators, but they were giving them the excavators that they could get in and operate and to get their hands on and see what it's like, and see, you really have to put people into the driver's seat, so to speak. And John Casella at our career fair last year actually had a great idea, which I think other people are going to try to steal this year, is bringing an excavator up to the fairgrounds, and he built an obstacle course. So you have to pick up a ball with the arm of the excavator and put it over here. And they made a challenge out of it. And as a matter of fact, to your point, we invited all the tech school program individuals to come to the career fair. So we had, I believe, 500 students showed up at that career fair and got to learn about construction, got to have their hands on equipment and actually experience what it's like to be in the industry. And that's crucial, because when you think about it, this is a math problem. So back when the 2020 census came out, we saw immediately what the challenge was here in the state of Vermont. The age group between 25 and 35 back in 2000 was around 195,000 people. In 2020, it was 95,000 people. So we lost all of those people in that age group, which is like, that's when you go into prime construction working age. Those people don't exist in Vermont anymore. Are they leaving? Are they going to our institutions and leaving?
They're just aging.
Are they aging? Are we having less children? I don't know that we can legislate that, but it is a math problem. So we have to bring people who wouldn't have normally considered construction as a career, and that means opening the door wide for everybody that would consider the career and showing them what the outcomes are. Because when you see a 23-year-old pull into your lot for training and they're driving a $60,000 pickup truck that they bought themselves, that's a good outcome. And they're buying homes too.
When they can find them.
Yeah, right.
Well, thank you again.
My pleasure.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, next up we have Peter Tucker.
I'm gonna free up some air.
Awesome. Well, nice to see everybody here.
We introduced everyone else, but to our committee, but you just missed us, so
Oh, I'm sorry.
we'll go around quickly again.
Sure.
Tom Stevens from Waterbury.
Kathleen James, Manchester.
All right. Hi.
Sophia Lamont, Morristown.
Jill Parsons, Newbury, Topsom, and Groton.
Emily Krasnow, South Burlington.
Ashley Bartley, Fairfax and
Hi,
Georgia.
Ashley. Caleb Elder, Starksboro. Right. Hey, Caleb.
Dennis Labonte, Lindenville.
Hi, Dennis.
Elizabeth Burrows, West Windsor.
Oh, West Windsor. Excellent.
Larry Labor, Essex, Orleans.
Larry.
Mary Howard, Rutland City,
Right,
District
Mary.
6.
Nice to see you. Yeah.
See you.
Robin Chestnut Tangerman.
Yes. Our token realtor on your committee. Yeah.
You just outed me.
I forgot.
I'm just getting started.
And I will do my annual
Okay.
one-liner. So Peter Tucker, full disclosure, there's a full disclosure comment. Peter Tucker is my wife's sister's husband's sister's husband.
Okay.
You got
He's
it.
my brother-in-law.
In Vermont, I think that counts, right?
That's funny.
Yeah. I can do it back. He can do it. He does it that way. I can do it the other way as well. Really throw you off. So thanks for having me here. Peter Tucker. I am the Director of Advocacy and Public Policy for the Vermont Association of Realtors. And I was going to say, Matt's really done my job here. I'm all set. But then when you went off the rails, I was like, I've got to congratulate this committee last year for really putting into place some positive things that are going to help housing over time, right? I mean, it's not an immediate return. But what happened at the very end with the housing bill, I thought was really good progress. And so, that's kind of like, how do we build on it now, right? How do we really create an environment where housing can be, not the topic of the day. And we have enough housing for everybody to live and work in. I'd like to, and if you picked up your mail, we did have these in your mailbox, but for those folks that don't, I've got some for the committee here. And here, I'll keep a copy so I know what the heck I'm talking about. We really, we work hard, and Rob can attest to this, that, you know, our Government Affairs Committee was meeting, you know, over the summer, really trying to look at housing. You know, everybody is in full agreement. We have a housing crisis and we need more housing. But it's like, how do you get there? And, you know, what are the ingredients that are actually going to lead to the development of housing? Matt alluded to it. You know, the state, and actually Josh Hanford, I was there last night as well and heard him. You know, the state can't just pay for housing, right? I mean, there's only a certain amount of funds that you have. We've had the benefit of all the ARPA funds. I think the nonprofits have done a great job of producing, you know, low-level housing for folks exiting homelessness, for subsidized rental housing. And they've gone a long ways. I mean, they still need more. But really, you know, the Realtor Association, you know, we kind of have two fundamental principles, I guess, that we think are really important. You know, one is property owner rights. You know, when you buy a property and you own it, you should be able to do what you want with your property. And, you know, we feel that property owners, we're, you know, one of the few advocacy groups that really represent property owners. But the second part is home ownership. And, you know, the housing, we call it the housing continuum, starts with exiting homelessness, you know, moving to subsidized rental housing, moving to market rate rental housing, and then purchasing your first home. And, you know, that purchase point is where the realtors become involved in housing. We do some multi-unit housing and rental housing, but for the most part, we transact real property. And, you know, our goal is to encourage the for-profit part of the housing organizations to give them the ability to build housing, hopefully at a reasonable price, you know, that's affordable and available. This is obviously our challenge right now. You know, we don't have enough affordable and available housing. So we try to, you know, kind of break it down and go through, you know, well, you know, we know we have a housing issue. How do we create circumstances that are going to cause developers to build more housing that we can convey? Certainly, there are things that are out of control, right? Like the cost of materials has been something that's been pretty much out of control. You know, it seems to be coming back to earth a little bit right now, but is still going to put pressure on. But the things that the legislature can address are, you know, the regulatory framework and also infrastructure. You know, helping to put infrastructure in place that will allow for, you know, smart growth and compact development in villages, cities, towns, and neighborhood development areas. And, you know, we're in agreement that that's the right place to encourage housing. I think that the challenge is every village center has a river running through it. And, you know, the chair has kind of pointed to that as, you know, that's a, you know, real challenge. Do we just fill in there and hope that, you know, that we've flood-proofed everything? Or do we have to, you know, kind of look geographically at where new housing is going to kind of fit in? And, you know, it's not a perfect circle around the village center, but rather, you know, kind of what fits the topography of the land. So, you know, when it comes to, you know, the next step past housing is permit reform. And that's something that the legislature can address. It doesn't cost you any money. It is just really getting out of the way and allowing builders to build. And, you know, this is where we feel that there can be a really positive impact. Kind of breaks down into two areas right now. First is municipal zoning and planning and permitting. The second is more of our statewide Act 250, you know, reviews of development. Representative Bongartz will be introducing a bill on municipal planning and zoning. I'm sure most of you have heard bits and pieces of it. You know, we're looking for the final version at this point to comment on. But it does make a lot of sense, right? You know, have more compact development, make more spaces available in those downtown areas, and increase the capacity by increasing the density of housing. So, you know, that certainly is a very good thing. And that works for the 70 towns or so that have municipal water and sewer. And that I did tell actually Senate Economic and Housing this morning that, you know, initially I said, well, of the 70 wastewater systems that we have in Vermont, or 72, I think it is, residential, that most of them would be in Chittenden County, but they're really not. They're really spread around the state pretty good. Windsor County has a number, Chittenden County has some, and it's really more diverse than I thought it would be. So certainly, municipal planning and zoning around wastewater systems makes a lot of sense. And there is some, kind of regulating that being less exclusionary, right, is going to be a very positive thing. But there's still 180, 70 towns that don't have municipal services that we still have plenty of opportunities to create housing and infill development. To accomplish that, really, our focus has been on a rule in Act 250, or a definition, I should say. It's called the 10-5-5 rule. And that is, if you build more than 10 units within 5 miles within 5 years, you become subject to Act 250 review. We feel, not so much in the big municipalities, but in these smaller towns, where you've got a local builder who would be interested in building, a couple of units here and 4 units there, really run into a situation where they get up to 9 units and they're like, I'm not doing anything, because then I would be, the next unit's going to be subject to Act 250. This is the bill that's in place, Representative Bongart's bill, had that initially. It's dropped out because they really wanted to focus on municipal planning and zoning. It's going to take more than that to really get the job done, to create incentives and to also create incentives not only for big cities with wastewater, but with smaller towns, to allow for some of that infill development. We kind of said, okay, here's the regulatory situation that can help housing. What are the other things that legislature, the government can potentially help with to facilitate more housing? And, so that kind of steps into that whole wastewater capacity issue. Things, encouraging towns to, and now the governor has in the tax adjustment, some money to help towns get grants. And to use those, use town grants for improvements to wastewater systems. Expansion is really hard. It's really expensive, I guess. If you're thinking about a town that doesn't have it, getting up to the point where you can afford a wastewater plant is pretty cost prohibitive. But at least expanding and improving systems that are in place to allow for more residential development. We would encourage that as well. And, I think that those kinds of things can be done, can't do everything, but, if we could just simply get out of the way and allow builders to build, we have the opportunity to create more housing. That's our, kind of our focus. And, certainly this is a committee that, I met with in the past. And, so, as I say, I really appreciate what you guys have accomplished so far. We think that some of these regulatory changes really just kind of have to happen. I mean, we've been talking about it for years. Now's the time. Let's get it done. And I would say to extend that to look at municipalities that have good zoning and planning, and to say they don't need Act 250 review in cities and towns that have a bylaw upgrades. That would make sense as well. So that's where our focus is going to be. Happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
A quick review maybe on the status of the market.
Sure.
The market is such a philosophical thing, right? Because it's undetermined. It's based on something that's all out of all of our control. Like, not one person sets the market, we all do. You touched on private property rights.
Yes.
And we view that through the lens of private property rights versus public, and it's not versus, but alongside public policy. So
balance, yeah.
For instance, the equity in our house has grown and we've done nothing, except the market around us has grown. I'd be hard pressed to donate 50% of my equity simply because that's my house, that's my wealth.
Right.
And wealth is in a house. I mean, that's a traditional American thing. The market's been crazy.
Yep.
Where is it today? Is it as crazy as it was a year ago? And what impacts do you see in terms of, I mean, I don't want to talk about the impacts on rentals and making towns like Kilmston more exclusive because it's too expensive to live, but it's happening. And there are just a dozen towns where it's really out of control. But I just, from your perspective, statewide, what does it look like?
Yep. And so, I've been kind of, as I came on board 2 years ago in the advocacy role, I've been a broker for 25 years previous. I started I always like statistics, so I've kind of kept track of the market. Even when I was selling, I felt like that was my job, was to provide good quality information to my clients. But I've been keeping track monthly through the year 2022. And, what we can see is that, we have reached a point, where we're just kind of stuck in place. We don't have inventory to sell, or we don't have enough inventory to sell. And I want to go back to the right kind of inventory in a minute. But I've been doing monthly statistics. I can tell you that for 2022, we're looking at being selling about 22% less units of single family homes in the state of Vermont. At the same time, the dollar volume of that business is only down about 11%. Why is that? Because average prices are higher, and average prices have continued to stay high. I expect to see those peak and kind of come off. And it has to a certain extent.
They're not going to go down.
No, not dramatically. The pressures of the market over the last 2 years, a lot of out-of-state buyers, folks that are basically waiving contingencies just to get the property. Those pressures seem to be relaxing. Somebody described, actually, I listened to one of our agents give an excellent presentation on public radio last week, about the fact that it used to be 15 bids on a house, and now it's more like 5. That it's still a very competitive market, but it's not that supercharged market that we saw, especially in 2020. So, what do we expect? I mean, if we don't have inventory, we can't create sales. It's a pretty simple evaluation. When I look at the number of units sold and it's down, I know that is completely why that happened. The other part, in the average sale price, why is it so high? I had one realtor friend of mine, question that, and he's like, why do we use average? And I said, well, because it's a number we can determine, right? It's a pretty easy calculation. But it really does lead to, his point was, the average is high because we don't have anything reasonably priced to sell. And that's pushed the average up. And that is absolutely true. Really focusing on that first level of home ownership is where we feel, we need to be most effective. A lot of housing policies, be they local zoning or Active 50 or, what have you, are going to address all kinds of housing, from, exiting homelessness to higher end housing. But the reality is, if we could fill that part of the market and also find a way to make sure that's used for residential use, right? Not for other uses, will be very beneficial. Pull the average price down, make the product that we really need more available. So we think that ought to be where the focus is. Going into 23, as long as we have inventory, we have demand. Interest rates have certainly, I actually was talking to Representative Meadows, who's another realtor in the legislature out in the hall. And he said, yeah, interest rates is starting to hit his business. And he is in Milton in that area, and, has a residential market. And so he is starting to feel the impact of interest rates. I think those even have kind of, mortgage rates probably have kind of peaked and may come off a little bit, but they're still historically incredibly low. So it will have some impact on business. I hope we haven't chased a ton of buyers out of the market. And that's kind of one of my concerns, is that folks have become so frustrated. Anytime you've worked with a buyer who has lost a bid on a house, you cannot believe the frustration, and it, rightfully so. So if we could fill that base price point, I think we could really help a lot of folks and really satisfy the marketplace as well.
Representative Elder, then Lavalley.
It does, really appreciate your testimony on all this. It's really interesting. Thinking about just prices are high, right? And so that makes the average high. But also, if the source of new housing stock is new construction, then that's even more expensive, isn't it? Just because if you want to build a 2,000 square foot house, you're going to have to sell it for $600,000, right? I mean, so that doesn't really help when we consider that a couple of years ago, a 2,000 square foot house in the market in general, going to be between 250 and 350, right? We're not there anymore, but we're not going to get there by building. So I'm just kind of like, what's the thought there?
Yeah, so what are my five, Matt, you may have to help me with the 5 L's. Lumber, labor, legal, land, and what's the fifth one?
You invented this.
Yeah, I know, I'm sorry. And I didn't invent it either, I copied it from somebody. But, so material costs, certainly have driven up the cost of construction, right, dramatically. And I'm not sure we can do an awful lot about that, but if we can get, less restrictive permitting, more certainty in permitting is really, I think, there's things that the legislature can do and there's other stuff that we just can't do. So those are the two areas that we felt, we could accomplish something are in, reduce permitting, get out of the way, let builders build, and better infrastructure, where it can be accomplished, to allow for that, at least that piece to be a fixed cost. With Act 250, with a lot of local planning and zoning, it really does come down to the certainty of applying for a permit. A lot of builders won't take on a project because they understand the risk. And so as a result, before they really enter, and get going with something, they're like, yeah, I'm just going to pass on it. So, hopefully by encouraging that, there will be some cost benefits that occur. But it really is it's still going to require the private marketplace to do things. And it's not inexpensive at this point. I don't disagree with you, but there are some things that can be accomplished, and that's kind of what we're looking to do. Yep.
Representative Lavalley.
Speaking of averages, what's the average time frame to get a permit?
Yeah. It depends, I guess, what kind of permit you're talking about,
Just say residential housing.
Yep. So it can be as simple as, applying to your town and, getting a single family building permits are not difficult. When you get into projects, obviously they get more complex. I mean, Act 250, I think that you're looking, 6 to 9 months if things are perfect and nobody appeals. And that's not the timing there's certainly a lot of work that gets done up front. And, so folks have to be able to, to pay that cost up front and then just hope they recoup it at the other end of the project. That's the risk. And if it gets stretched out, it gets more costly and then more risky as well. So I think that the normal process, not all that complicated, it's the next level, if it gets appealed and that sort of thing that really, stretches things out, adds tremendously to cost, and obviously delivering product, you can't deliver until you've got a permit to go. So, yeah.
Last question for me anyway. There's been a push on in the last couple of years about ADUs. If I want to plan ahead and I build a house, but I want to lay the foundation or build the ADU while I'm building it, does that change turn it into a duplex?
It doesn't.
One side of it is commercial, is going to be meant to be commercial.
Right. Would it change it? I don't think it's a duplex. I think it's a residential. I mean, it is an accessory dwelling unit. Typically, is an accessory to a residential house. And it is it's a dwelling unit, so it is also residential. I guess where ADUs have gained popularity because this is the quickest way to build housing. I mean, take your barn and just turn it into an apartment, I mean, that wouldn't be hard to do.
Sure.
Yeah.
So your kids.
But,
No, no.
No
We
AD
did that already.
no ADU for you.
No, I just, it's just a question of,
Yeah.
I'll ask the bankers too and I'll ask, you know,
Yeah.
because it's, there's implications for, there's allowances for accessory dwelling units, but there's implications for, I don't know, electrical licensing, you know, I can build my own house. and
Yes.
or I can wire my own house if you build my house and.
Right.
But if it's a duplex or if it has commercial, I'm just wondering if the commercial property piece of it changes the nature of a mortgage or insurance or what have you. Never mind if it's an Airbnb, but specifically if it's an ADU in the way that we're trying
Right.
to promote them.
Right. If you have your mother-in-law living there, you know, it truly is an accessory dwelling unit. If you rent it to somebody, it becomes a public space, right? A public building. The interesting thing about the language that I've seen around ADUs is it pretty typically says, you know, the house is a residential unit with residential requirements. The ADU then becomes a public building requiring fire and safety and, egress, that sort of thing. It's like any rental though. I mean, if you're taking money for a property, you have to provide a safe and habitable property, long and short of it. So I don't think it would qualify as a duplex and it's always going to be a percentage of the total floor space, right? 900 square feet or the percentage. So it really is kind of in that little separate category at this point. Yeah.
Okay. We're going to take a break now and thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Good. Nice to see everybody.
Part 2 right at 2:00.